Hello, friends. This is Pastor Rich Neal again. We're back with part 3 of our series, Teach Us to Pray. We're looking at several ways to pray with Scripture that have a great more deal of affinity with our personality types based upon the Myers-Briggs personality type indicator. And we're doing this in the hope that you'll find a style of prayer with Scripture that better fits you personally and will make the study of Scripture, prayer with Scripture, much more fruitful for you and your life. So last week we talked about the Augustinian style of prayer. It's a prayer that's really best suited for the NF personality type, the intuitive feeling type. And it's a prayer that really speaks directly to the heart, that goes to the core of our being and speaks to us very personally, as a friend might speak to a friend. You can find details about that in our last video segment and online with the last, the Augustinian style of prayer. I hope you had at least a good introduction to that style of prayer. Now, with what we're going to do today, we're going to switch to the NT temperament, the intuitive thinking. And in a way, we're going to sort of reverse the process that we used last time with the NF style. Instead of speaking to our heart personally in this way, the Scripture in this style of prayer will speak a little more to our mind. We'll engage our minds a little more and use our intellect more completely than we did in the last version. Rather than approaching Scripture from a feeling standpoint, we'll approach it from a thinking standpoint, thinking perspective, an intellectual, thoughtful perspective. Now, we're not going to abandon the feeling function entirely because it is still important to have the Scripture speak to us personally in a feeling way. But we're going to sort of make that secondary. And we're going to really use our minds and our intellect and our thought processes to approach Scripture. Now, the virtue that we might use, for example, to focus on could be faith. Let's say we're going to talk about faith. We want to pray about faith. We choose that virtue or that topic or that focus, and then we simply walk around it and examining it from many angles, probing it, questioning it from many perspectives to try to gain as much insight into that focus or faith question as we possibly can. And generally to do that, there's a list of 7 questions that are helpful to use as a guideline for how we approach that Scripture. And the 7 questions are a little bit like the 5 questions that a newspaper reporter will use in writing an article. So you might approach the Scripture with these questions in mind. What? Why? How? Who? Where? And with what helps or what assistance? For example, let's take the virtue of faith. We have a question about faith. The questions that you might use to explore that are, for example, what do we mean by faith? What's entailed in the practice of faith? What are the reasons to justify the pursuit of faith? Why should I have faith? What's its value? What's important about having faith? How might I practice faith? And when and where should faith be practiced? What are the appropriate venues for the practice of faith? And who are the best examples from the Bible or from our history as a church or from our own experience personally, the best examples of faith that we can use to guide us? As an example to help get you started with this, I'm going to read a passage from Matthew's Gospel, and then I'll suggest some questions you might use to approach the reading more personally. The passage is from Matthew 6th chapter, beginning at verse 19. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust consume, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust consumes, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? No one can serve two masters, for a slave will either hate the one and love the other, or be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth. So as you read that passage and sit with it, and let it soak into you, here are some examples of questions you might start asking about that scripture. How does this teaching of Jesus differ from the generally accepted practice and teaching of today's world? How far are you willing to go to follow Jesus in his teaching about these values, about true riches? In what ways are you trying to serve two masters? Pardon me. Another question is, in your life, who are the different masters that determine what you do, how you act, where you spend your time, your money, your energy? What are the masters you serve in your life? What practical changes do you need to make to your present life in order to bring it more into accord with the teachings of Jesus? Those are just some of the questions you might ask about that passage from Matthew's Gospel, or about any of the passages of Scripture that you're focused on in your reading. You'll add to those ones that come out of your personal experience and your personal situation. So feel free to adapt those in whatever way is possible. The key thing is to use your mind and really explore the depths of the passage or the teaching or the focus with your intellect. Examine it in whatever depth and breadth you can possibly come up with. One of the places where you'll find perhaps most support in this kind of prayer life is the library. You might want to use especially the research documents and books that are available to you in a good, well-equipped library. You might want to use advice from people who have different experience from yours to gain as much insight as you can from as many sources as possible to help explore the scripture more in detail. We'll have some fun with this and also try it on to see how it fits. If you're a thinking type, a thinking person, you'll find this perhaps fits you better than others of these four variations of the Lectio Divina that we've been exploring. Look for a brief description of this type of prayer on our website, along with a description, a little thumbnail sketch of this personality type. And then make it your own. Download the documents, explore the scriptures, try this style of prayer, and let us know how you experience it. If you're seeing this video for the first time, you'll find that we meet on a Zoom meeting class time on next Wednesday. And you're welcome to join us there and explore this more in detail with others who have questions and observations and experiences that they're willing to share. Thanks for joining us this time. And we've got, after this, we'll have two more styles of prayer for two different personality temperaments, styles. And we look forward to seeing you there as well. Be faithful.